Every country on Earth is drowning in debt. The United States has now passed $38 trillion. The European Union carries around $14 trillion, and Japan holds nearly $9 trillion of debt. Even oil-rich countries and export giants, all of them are heavily indebted. But here's the strange part: if everyone owes money, who is actually getting paid? Financial history teaches us this. Economics is never just economics. Money, power, and history are tightly intertwined. And debt sits right at the center of that knot. It is the invisible skeleton of the modern world wars, crises, booms, and collapses. All of them rest on top of this foundation of IOUs. Today, global debt has passed $315 trillion, 3 times the size of the world economy. So how did we get here? The answer isn't found in the heart of finance, but deep in history. The story of national debt began long before credit cards. In 1694, England was fighting France and running out of gold. As a solution, they turned to merchants. In exchange for a promise of future tax revenues paid as interest, the merchants financed the crown. And the Bank of England was born. For the first time in history, a state had found a way to spend money that didn't yet exist. Governments borrowed, investors lent to the state, and in return they received a promise backed by the government's reputation. Thus the government bond was born, the seed of today's financial system. This model worked so well that France, the Netherlands, and America all copied it. Debt became synonymous with power. Empires once conquered land, now they collect interest. The battlefield is no longer drawn on a map. It's drawn on balance sheets fast forward to today. And debt has become the world's biggest export. Every country is indebted. Every bank lends, every citizen, through their salary, taxes, and pension, is both a debtor and a creditor. So who stands at the other end of the rope? Let's look at the United States. Of the $38 trillion, about half is owed to investors, and most of those investors are American banks, funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve itself. Foreign holders account for around $9 trillion. So yes, the U.S. owes money to China, but it's a tiny slice of the total. Most of America's debt is owed to America. And this loop exists everywhere, not just in the U.S. Everyone holds everyone else's debt. One country buys U.S. bonds. The U.S. lends to Europe. Europe lends to developing countries. They, in turn, hold their reserves in Western bonds. A giant global chain of I lent to you, you lent to him, he lent to me is constantly spinning. But above this chain lies an even more powerful layer: financial markets, massive funds, pension pools, sovereign wealth funds, central banks. They decide which countries borrow cheaply and which ones must pay painfully high interest. When confidence disappears, money flees, and when money flees, economies collapse. Ballots choose governments, but markets decide which governments survive, and the modern priests of this system are the central banks. Central banks don't just manage debt, they create it. When the Federal Reserve buys a government bond, it creates new money. Every unit of currency in the system is someone else's debt. There is no such thing as debt-free money. For years, this system has survived on confidence. Nobody actually believes governments will pay off their debt. The real product is interest. Governments don't pay off debt. They roll it over. Like paying only the minimum on a credit card forever. But when confidence breaks, we see the consequences. In Greece, Argentina, Sri Lanka. Debt suddenly stops being abstract and becomes painfully real. People lose jobs, savings, and futures, while IMF reports, bondholders, and rating agencies rewrite the destiny of an entire nation. Because in this system, debt is never designed to end. It is designed to continue, not to be paid off, but to be perpetually renewed. That's why balancing the budget is a fairy tale. Eliminating debt would collapse the system itself. Here's the problem: saying we owe it to ourselves sounds comforting, but it's only half the truth. Interest does not flow equally through society, it flows upward. Workers and taxpayers pay, large funds and institutions collect. This is not a transfer between countries, it's a transfer between classes. Modern inequality is built on this mechanism. The system can run like this for many years, but the real question is, when will this machine stop? And when it does, who will still be standing? Debt is a promise, but no promise can be kept forever. If this thought gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe. History doesn't hide answers, It simply doesn't show them to those who aren't ready.